So the major updates this year have been helpful content, link spam, Google reviews, but that's to do with product reviews. And so I don't think that that's really relevant. There's a bunch of core update stuff. They've been pounding on this expertise, authority, and trust thing. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then, of course, what's been burning up the news recently is ChatGPT stuff.
Right.
And the various versions of that out there.
Cool. Okay.
Talking about the helpful content updates, here's the general idea. There's been so many sites out there that have been trying to generate content in various ways, not just AI, but human copywriters in such a way to just try to get pages to rank so that people would land on the page, and then they make ad revenue. And so what Google is going after is sites that are basically not adding anything new.
Right.
They don't have any authority. They're just regurgitating what everybody else has. So let's say, for instance, you had a website that was just the entire website was syndicated news feeds from other places. That's what Google's going after. It's like, we don't want that in the search results. We want the originals of each of those news stories. Let's see, talk about machine learning a little bit. So helpful content update, you'll see referred to as HCU lots of times. And they're using machine learning. What does that mean? All that means is they're studying data of some types to try to decide what is helpful content, what is content people are liking versus people are going yawn, clicking the back button and going someplace else. So the big question is, what are these signals that they're looking at, and what is this machine learning coming from? So we can get some clues from Google's announcement. And so what we've got in the next few slides here, I'm talking about specific verbiage they've put in their announcement about this update, and they work really, really hard on that. So how could they actually measure that? If that's what they're looking to measure, time on page is likely, right? So if your page ranks for some term in the search results, and on average, people click into your page and within 15 seconds, click back to the search results and click something else, there's a signal that was not helpful.
Sorry to interrupt. I have a quick question about content reusage for newspapers. How would this relate to a weekly column? Should a newspaper, instead of using the same title for that column, switch that to the subhead and then the topic of the column be the headline instead? Would that kind of operate more along and better than the opposite, where they just keep using the same headline every week and the subheadline is kind of giving you an idea of what the column's about?
That's a good question. The way I would probably want to structure that is I would have a page for that column and its archives. And so what's on that page each week is this week's column, and at the bottom, a link to the other, to the past versions of that. The reason I would do that is what Google's going to see is two things. One, they're going to see fresh content on that page on a regular basis. It shows them it's updated, is up to date, it's current, things like that. That's pretty important, especially for anything on a news site where Google's well aware that news is timely and that a story from today about a police chase is 100 times more relevant than the story from 5 years ago about a police chase. So that piece is good. The other thing is, when people like what's in the column and they link to it, you want them to link to the same page every time to build up page rank on that one single page. But if somebody wanted to drill down to your column from 3 weeks ago, easy enough to do, right? But that's going to allow you to build up that one page with more links and rank better for whatever it is. And a weekly column page is probably going to be a search landing page for one of two things. Now, here we come to the slide you put in there. So tell me about what's going on with your NLP.
At a high level, it's basically, kind of tagging the stories with the named entities, and, we use Spacey to link them and just kind of find the relationships. And that's at the bottom of every article. So, we're driving engagement on the site is the whole idea with that.
And the other thing also is Google does treat outbound links to other strong trusted sites on related topics as a very positive signal. It took them a long time to.
That's actually what I was going to ask about is if you have a piece of content where you're covering it from a very kind of narrow point of view, instead of wanting the the reader to have to click back and search for further information if you're smart enough to put in a couple of external links that can provide like the super detailed technical side of something.
Well, Google pays attention to whether you have those links. They're not seeing whether the user clicked. Google Analytics might, but that's not feeding into search results. Google's search ranking factors are all to do with what you clicked on a page of search results, and then did that person click again on something else pretty quickly afterwards. So Google's going to look at the page and look at those outbound links to strong sites and give you brownie points for them. They're not going to know whether somebody clicked on them or not. But on a positive note, if somebody goes into your article and spends 30 seconds reading it and realizes they have no idea what AI is, and they click on a link to AI and they land on whatever site and they spend 20 minutes reading the article there, the signal to Google is they landed on your page and stayed there for 20 minutes. And so that's positive, whether it was in your article or whether it was something you referred.
I have
one
a
thing I did
question.
talk about here on this, I think is pretty important, is the real authors for every story. No more, I think I might have this in the next slide. Well, maybe not. No more, no more bylines of, Tribune staff. Can't be doing it, because that's not a real person. That looks like it's syndicated or regurgitated or chat GPT generated or whatever.
I have a quick question about content reusage for newspapers. How would this relate to a weekly column? Should a newspaper, instead of using the same title for that column, switch that to the subhead and then the topic of the column be the headline instead? Would that kind of operate more along and better than the opposite, where they just keep using the same headline every week and the subheadline is kind of giving you an idea what the column's about?
That's a good question. The way I would probably want to structure that is I would have a page for that column and its archives. And so what's on that page each week is this week's column, and at the bottom, a link to the other, to the past versions of that. The reason I would do that is what Google's going to see is two things. One, they're going to see fresh content on that page on a regular basis. It shows them it's updated, is up to date, it's current, things like that. That's pretty important, especially for anything on a news site where Google's well aware that news is timely and that a story from today about a police chase is 100 times more relevant than a story from 5 years ago about a police chase. So that piece is good. The other thing is, when people like what's in the column and they link to it, you want them to link to the same page every time to build up page rank on that one single page. But if somebody wanted to drill down to your column from 3 weeks ago, easy enough to do, right? But that's going to allow you to build up that one page with more links and rank better for whatever it is. And a weekly column page is probably going to be a search landing page for one of two things. One is the columnist's name, and the other is whatever they call that column, right?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
No, that's really interesting because we could do that with category pages that just throw that column in there. And I'm not sure that too many of our publishers actually focus on it that way, but that's really good insight, I think. Yeah.
Well, think about a local business section of a newspaper, right? It makes perfect sense, and that's not a column particularly, but the local business section has the news stories that are within that category, and that's going to change every day. And you want the links to go to that section, not to a day's worth of pages. EEAT is that now Google can look at that and go, oh, okay, so Michael knows something about cameras. I don't really, I know a little, but anyway. But that's the sort of thing that Google can get out of the structured data. With structured data for your overall organization, it tells Google, hey, this is our LinkedIn, this is our Twitter feed, this is our Facebook, this is our Instagram, this is our TikTok, whatever it happens to be. And so Google can then see a bigger picture of, oh, you're not just, some one-off little website with nothing else out there. This is your Instagram. Oh, I can see that you have 1,100 followers. That's your Facebook. I can see you have 2,500 followers, that sort of stuff. It gives Google lots of clues about what they're looking at on the page, and also about the who. Who is your organization? Show me all these other places where you have a presence and followers. And for a particular story, who wrote it and who is that person? What's their credentials in the space? What are their followers like? Where else did they write? All right, now let's talk about AI generated content. So first of all, the players. Chat GPT is getting all the sunshine right now. but they're not the first, and there might not be the most important. So ChatGPT was created by an organization called OpenAI, which is open source artificial intelligence. Microsoft is a big investor in them. The GPT in here, which is really hard to say and hard to type, and what Bing is announced and is starting to use is do exactly the same thing, is take that same query that you typed into the search box and also feed it to ChatGPT and spit out an excerpt of what it comes back with, as in addition to the regular search results. So the difference between what you're getting back from one of these AI chatbots and what you get from search results is the search results are pointing to specific pages. This page has this title, and here's the description, and you can click into that if you want to see more. With the chatbot, they're looking at a whole bunch of documents and going, let's say the question is,
here's the answer.
Here's the answer, but they're pulling the answer from multiple sources. So let's talk about, let's get down to what actually matters to publishers is, what does AI mean if you're in the newspaper business? And just like you explain to your teenagers, just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean you should, right? And so CNET and BuzzFeed have been busted for doing it with very, very little editorial oversight. Well, let's say there's a new environmental bill or measure that's been passed, and you might want to, and sitting here in Oregon, the spotted frog is a big deal right here. And then there's also the spotted owls in the forest. And so you could, if you want a couple paragraphs on some other history to fill out the story of environmental change leadership from Oregon, you could throw at some of these pieces that you already know about as titles and get it to write yourself 2 or 3 paragraphs, and then just tweak that.
I was curious what you think as far as the search-based chat. Do you think that's really going to have that much of an impact on a news website?
The basis behind it has to be live data, or it won't be very useful, because a lot of the kinds of stuff you can answer quickly would be like, what's the name of the new Bend mayor? Or, what's the weather forecast for this weekend? Things like that need very current data. With that being said, will it be that different from what we have today? I don't think so, because right now for those searches that have simple answers that can come out in a paragraph or 4 bullet items or something like that, featured snippets are doing that today. It's just going to be an enhanced version of featured snippets. So I don't think it's going to change it all that much.